Well guys, in this video, I am going to be doing something a little bit different that we don't normally do on this channel. And that is going to be my official AFL finals predictions. We are just going to be following through on the squiggle ladder predictor here. It does have the finals pre-filled, obviously, because the home and away season is done. And I'm just going to be going through each game and just giving my thoughts on each game and giving my tip and also a margin. Obviously, we are still, at the time of recording, a little over a week away from the first final, but this is just my preliminary thoughts. We don't have all the injury news, we don't have all the team news, selection news, all the rest of it, but we'll just work through each final here in chronological order, starting with Thursday night's qualifying final between Geelong and Port Adelaide. This is the third qualifying final between these two clubs in 5 seasons. They did meet at Adelaide Oval in 2020 and 2021. Of course, 2020 was the COVID-affected year, and 2021 as well was COVID-affected with no games in Victoria after around round 5 or 6. Port Adelaide winning on both of those occasions. Port Adelaide also beat Geelong down in Geelong earlier in this season. They are in good form. The Cats also in pretty good form. They have had a couple of good wins. They did beat Fremantle over in Perth. They did lose to St Kilda though. Big win over the Eagles in the last round of the home and away season. Port are on a pretty strong winning streak, and I do like the power in this one. I do think they do have the wood over the Cats in finals, especially at home. Ken's got them playing some good footy. Winning qualifying finals has never really been a problem for Port Adelaide and Ken Hinkley. I do think they will get the job done in this one. Now, the second elimination final between the Western Bulldogs and Hawthorn, probably the game of the finals in terms of the first week. Both teams are in scintillating form. Both are very offensive juggernauts. Big scores kicked, very attacking brand. Two of the more exciting teams in the competition. It is a real shame that one of these teams will have to go home after this round, because you can make the argument that both are probably in the top 6 or 4 even teams in the competition. Western Bulldogs are officially the home team in this one. Obviously, that game being at the MCG, they don't really play finals at Marvel anymore, unless you are going to have 4 finals in Victoria on the same weekend. That does play into Hawthorn's favour. They're just playing with such freedom, such expression at the moment, and I do see that continuing, unfortunately, for the Western Bulldogs, who are very unlucky to get knocked out, I've got to say, in this point in time. And I do have the Hawks winning through to a semi-final against Geelong. The Saturday 3:20 game is the Sydney Derby. Sydney Swans GWS for the 4th time in finals. The Giants winning all 3 of the previous meetings between these clubs in finals. Although the Swans have won the last 3 home and away meetings between these two clubs, including both this year. I think the Giants are actually in better form for this one. The Swans are just going for me. I mean, if you look at the last 3 rounds of the home and away season, they played 1 quarter against Collingwood and won. Big comeback from a big deficit at 3/4 time. They sort of played a half against Essendon. They were down at half time but blew them away in the second half. And even the last game against the Crows was a bit of a funny game. They got out to a big lead early. The Crows got right back in it. Then the Swans kind of held them at arm's length after that. This is at the SCG. It does play into Sydney's hands in that regard. But I am going to tip the Giants in this one. I do think they have the finals experience. I don't think they have the wood over the Swans. And I'm going to be tipping the Giants to go through to a home prelim final. And the last game of week 1 of the finals, it is the first elimination final between Brisbane and Carlton. Carlton very lucky to get into the finals. Obviously lost the last game to St Kilda, but Freo couldn't get the job done over Port Adelaide. The Blues have fallen into finals. Obviously a lot of injuries. They will get a few back, you would think, for that game. There has been a bit of talk about Mackay and Curnow coming back into the team for that one. I think the Blues story, though, is a bit deeper than just losing all those players to injury. I do think they fell off defensively. A very stoppage-based team, clearance dependent on Cripps particularly. They really looked impotent going forward against the Saints, with Brodie Kemp playing at full forward with no Mackay and Curnow. Not too much representation from their smalls. Even if they get a few back, I think Brisbane get the job done in this one. So the semi-finals will have the Swans and the Lions at the SCG. First finals meeting, I think, since 2003 preliminary final. Brisbane getting the job done there at what was then ANZ Stadium, or actually Telstra Stadium, the Olympic Stadium in Sydney. On that night, they were the away team, obviously, but winning through to the 03 grand final and getting the job done against Collingwood. The Swans are pretty unlucky to find themselves in a semi-final. Dominant team all year, although the last 6 to 8 weeks they did taper off and come back to the pack. In my opinion, this would be a great game. I don't know whether Brisbane are really in the best form. They do have a tendency to sort of peak in finals in recent years. Remember 2022? I think they lost a late game to knock them out of the top 4 in that season as well. Beat Richmond in the elimination final, and then they beat Melbourne in the semi-final. They did get smashed against Geelong in the prelim, but I think their finals blues are sort of behind them, obviously making the grand final and losing by 4 points last year. However, the Swans are too good to go out in straight sets. I think they get the job done in this one. And the other semi-final is a bit of a throwback to the early 2010s and also the 2008 grand final between Geelong and Hawthorn. This will be the last game in Melbourne before the grand final, according to my predictions. So it'll get a massive crowd, around 90 plus K, no doubt. And I do think the loser of Port and Geelong is a serious straight sets contender, given the strength of the Bulldogs and also Hawthorn. The Cats don't really have a terribly strong midfield, although you could argue Hawthorn don't really have that many stars. They're just playing with such a vigour, getting so much spark out of their small forwards, Nick Watson and Jack Ginnivan. And Sam Mitchell obviously is a good coach. He's filled them with belief. I think they can basically do anything in terms of making a dent in the final series this year. Geelong haven't really done anything wrong, but they feel more to me like a 5 to 8 team who's sort of fallen into the top 4 just by being a bit more consistent than some of the other teams in the finals. So for me, I actually like the Hawks in this one. I think the momentum will be rolling. I think they'll be fired up. They'll have a big crowd behind them, and I think they get the win and knock the Cats out in straight sets. So that leaves us with our preliminary finals, the Giants and the Hawks. Very interesting one. You wouldn't probably have picked anything like this at the midway point of the season, but Hawthorn are on a hot streak. The Giants as well, probably 2 of the form teams at the competition. They did meet a few weeks ago in Canberra. Hawthorn holding a pretty big lead at 3/4 time, but the Giants just reeling them in to win by under a kick on that occasion. 2 exciting teams, 2 very strong teams in terms of small forwards. You do also have Jesse Hogan for the Giants in amazing form, and also Brent Daniels and Darcy Jones for the Giants, the Mosquito Fleet. This would be a great game to watch. I think the Hawks, though, they will run out of steam against the Giants. They'll have a week off, obviously, the Giants. Hawks on the road, young team. I think it'll be a close game. It could easily be a similar result to the 2016 prelim between Western Bulldogs and GWS, where the Bulldogs went up to NG Stadium full of momentum. They'd won 2 knockout finals and knocked off the Giants in one of the best games of all time. But I think in this one, the Giants just get the job done. Too much finals experience. They will progress through to their second grand final. And the other preliminary final, Port Adelaide and the Sydney Swans. We all know what happened when these 2 teams met at the Adelaide Oval a few weeks ago. Port winning by 112 points. One of the most unbelievable results you'll ever see. They do have a good record over the Swans. They have won, I think, 8 in a row against them at all grounds. So Port would hold no fear of playing the Swans. According to these predictions, the Swans obviously would have already lost to the Giants in the qualifying final. They would be on the road. But also for Port, another prelim. We know Ken Hinckley struggles with knockout finals. They did lose the 2020 prelim to Richmond. They did get smashed by the Western Bulldogs in 2021. Also the semi-final in 2023, losing at home to the Giants. Has been a knock on Ken Hinckley. He hasn't won a knockout final since 2014. And I do think that trend continues. I do think Sydney just have the experience, just have the game plan, just hold their nerve a bit more. It will be a close game, but I think the Swans win their way through to a grand final against the Greater Western Sydney Giants, and all New South Wales grand final. Obviously at the MCG, what a game this would be. I think you could make an argument that these are the 2 best teams in the AFL this year, despite ladder positions. Big history of playing good games against each other, big finals obviously as well. We're saying the Giants would have already beaten the Swans in this final series. I do think the wide open expanses of the MCG, hopefully hopefully it's a dry day. Hopefully it is a good weather game in terms of that. That'll suit Jesse Hogan. He'll be isolated in the forward line for the Giants. Everything goes through Jesse. You will have the Crummers at his feet. I don't know if the Swans have the forward strength. Logan McDonald and Joel Amati against Sam Taylor and also Buckley down there. And in the middle, probably you give the edge to Sydney, I think, although the Giants have a strong midfield as well. But I'm going to give this one to the Greater Western Sydney Giants winning their first premiership against their arch rivals. I think it'll be a great game, probably around 8 or 10 points, I think. And I do like Jesse Hogan for a big bag on grand final day, winning the Norm Smith medal. I'm going to say he kicked 6 goals. What a redemption story for Jesse Hogan, and what a premiership win. The first premiership win in GWS history. That is all we're going to have time for today, guys. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to subscribe for more.